Hi there. My name is Sam Capodici from the Install and Packaging team at the ZVM Development Lab in Poughkeepsie, New York. And I'll be presenting an introduction to ZVM installation and upgrade. This presentation should give you a nice conceptual foundation to approach the install guide more confidently and understand what's going on during the installation process. This presentation is not a replacement for the installation guide, and please consult that guide before performing any installation or upgrade of your own. So first we're going to do an overview of some important terms and concepts related to installation and upgrade. Then we'll run through two examples. The first will be a 7.4 second level traditional installation. The second will be a 7.3 to 7.4 upgrade installation. Finally, I'll share some of my tips and tricks that I've learned working on install. So first, an overview. We'll be covering two different types of installation today. The first one is traditional installation, which installs a new ZVM system or SSI cluster where there was no system before. So this can be done on the first level, where you install directly onto an LPAR, or a logical partition, via the Hardware Management Console's integrated 3270 console. In other words, you're installing right onto the hardware, into a partition on the Z server or mainframe. You can also install second level. This means installing a guest VM of a first level system using its TCP/IP stack. You're essentially building on top of an existing system to create a second system. A traditional installation installs to a set of DASD and is customized according to your needs. It includes pre-installed licensed programs that you can enable and customize at any time. I like to compare it to building a house. You're purchasing land that might not have anything on it yet, and you're building up a house to fit your needs, the size of your family, and other factors that are unique to your own life circumstances. The other type of installation we'll cover is an upgrade installation, also known as upgrade in place. So this takes an existing ZVM system and upgrades it to the new release level. So for the current release level 7.4, you could either start from 7.2 or 7.3, so you can upgrade up to 2 release levels. This process involves installing a temporary work system, second level. So a temporary work system is installed on top of the system you are trying to upgrade, and then the new release level code is moved down from that system to your current system with minimal impact. So if traditional installation is like building up a house from the ground up where there was nothing before, then upgrade installation is like taking your existing house and installing a bunch of balloons on the second level so that you can pick it up and take it around with you. That's sort of how I like to think of an upgrade installation. You're taking this existing house that you've built up and customized to your needs, and instead of going to all the trouble of moving, you attach some balloons onto it and take it with you wherever you want to go. An SSI, or Single System Image Cluster, is a multi-system environment in which a few different ZVM systems can be managed as a single resource pool. So there are certain shared DASD volumes between all 4 of these members that can be managed as a group. The great advantage of doing this is that virtual machines can be moved from one system to another while they are running. For this introductory session, we'll be covering examples of non-SSI installations, but I did want to touch on a few of those differences that you might expect to see if you do an SSI installation. Firstly, for the traditional installation of an SSI cluster, so that's installing a cluster where there was none before, your common and release volumes will be shared, but each member will need a few of its own volumes, specifically the system residence volume, paging, and spool. You can choose to install up to 4 members at one time. Then you can add additional members up to 8. You can take a look in ZVM CP Planning and Administration for more information about adding further members. But for traditional installation, you can install up to 4 members. For the upgrade installation, you can upgrade the members one at a time for minimal disruption. All members have to start out at the same release level, so all 7.2 or all 7.3 before upgrading. So you can't upgrade a mixed release cluster, and the upgrade will proceed 1 member at a time. Before we dive into the installation procedure, let's take a look at what the DASD layout of a ZVM system actually looks like. This is important as we start to plan our installation because we want to know where we're installing our system to. This diagram actually represents a 2-member SSI system, just to show you which volumes are going to be shared and which are not. Starting with our shared volumes in the center here, the first one is the common volume. which includes things like the system config and the source directory. These are also shared volumes, and these are the release disks. That's one set per release per cluster. So for example, this is for release 7.2, and this is for 7.4. These disks contain release-specific information like these maintenance IDs. Now moving to the individual member volumes. So for our first member here, you can see it has a few disks that are specific to that member. For example, here's the system residence volume. This is where you would IPL your system from. It contains things like your warm start checkpoint, your object directory, a lot of these maintenance disks. You'll also need a paging disk and a spool disk. And again, these disks are one set per member. So this is the second member's disks over here, and here's the first member's, whereas these in the center are shared. Now that you're an expert in all the terminology that you're going to need to understand the installation procedure, let's jump into an example. So this is going to be a 7.4 traditional installation, second level, non-SSI. So to recap, non-SSI means it's just one system, it's not a cluster. Second level means it's being installed over an existing first level system using its TCP/IP stack, and we're installing at the 7.4 release level. So again, this is where I use the metaphor of building a house. Now, if you're building a house, before you start laying down any cement, what is the first thing that you want to do? If you guess that the first step is to gather permits and materials, then you'd be correct. What does this mean in the context of a ZVM traditional installation, though? Let's take a look first at some of our general requirements. The first thing we're going to need to do is order electronic delivery of the ZVM 7.4 product via IBM ShopZ. When your order comes in, it'll include install media for both 3390 and FBA, so be sure to download the right kind for the DASD that you plan to install to. Then, once you have that media, you'll need a way to get it onto your system so that we can install it second level. In this case, we'll be using a CMS formatted mini disk, which will be accessible from our existing first level system, and to which we have loaded the ZVM 7.4 product. You can see the ZVM installation guide for some other options of ways to get this onto your system. We'll need a supported processor and a local 3270 terminal. And finally, of course, we'll need some DASD volumes. This example is going to use 3390 DASD, but again, be aware that there is different install media for 3390 or FBA DASD. So be sure to grab the right one. Now, for our second level system, the first thing we'll need, of course, is a first level system. So a first level system running a supported release of ZVM because it's that system's TCP/IP stack that we will use to install our second level system. And we'll need a nice user ID with various requirements that are highlighted in the ZVM installation guide. Next, we'll need to lay out some blueprints for our system. As the saying goes, measure twice, cut once. And any construction worker can tell you they'd rather not start laying down the foundation without having taken any measurements first. So in the context of our traditional installation, this refers to the worksheets that can be found in the ZVM installation guide. So these first two worksheets will have to be completed regardless of whether you're installing SSI or regardless of your DASD type. So first you'll need system basics, your system needs a name and a default password, you'll need to identify your DASD type, in this case it'll be 3390, and then in our example it's non-SSI, and where to install some of those pre-installed licensed products. Then you'll need to choose your installation source. So as you might remember, we chose to use a CMS formatted mini disk. So we'll need the location of that mini disk and to make sure that it's accessible from our first level system. Then, our example here is a non-SSI installation and uses 3390 DASD, so we'll follow this flowchart right up to the top here. And it'll tell us that we need to complete worksheet 2. All we need to do is identify the label and the address for each of our new 3390 system volumes. If we had used FBA, we might need to include some information on where to define the volumes if they didn't exist already. Whereas if we had installed an SSI cluster, we would also need a name and a location for each individual member of that cluster. Now, turning to our DASD diagram, we are going to need one common volume, which is our shared space for things like system configuration. We'll need 2 release volumes to contain our content specific to 7.4. We'll need a system residence volume, where the information for your system essentially lives, where you would IPL from to start up your new second level system. And you'll need some CP-owned paging space and some spool space, which may be shared. But in our case, that doesn't matter because we're only installing one system. So that comes out to a total of 6 volumes, and that's 3390 DASD that we'll need for our installation. Now that we've done all of our planning, got our permits, gathered our materials, we're ready to start laying some foundations for our brand new house, our new ZVM system. So firstly, we'll need to load our files onto that CMS mini disk, which you can refer to the installation guide for more information. Then we'll want to link that disk and attach the DASD, the 6 DASD that we need to install to. Then we can run this command called instapipe, and then this pipeline DVD decode, which again is printed in the installation guide. And this will prepare us to run this program called DVD prime, which will load some of our mini disks with the files that we'll need in order to perform the installation. So again, a lot of steps that we need to run through just to set up for the installation. And again, refer to the installation guide for the full set of preparation steps. Now that our foundation is laid, we need to return to our blueprints to remember what kind of house it is we're trying to build. So first we're going to use this instaplan traditional command. And after running instaplan traditional, it'll bring up a panel that'll look a little something like this. And this is where we'll apply the information from our worksheet 1, our system basics. So we'll choose where to install some of these products, what language to use, what DASD type to use, file pool. We're choosing a non-SSI installation for this example, and we'll choose a default password. So before we proceed, we're going to get this confirmation screen. It's just going to make sure that we didn't have a little too much coffee and make some typos. So assuming all this information looks all right, you can go ahead and continue. Next, we'll refer back to our worksheet 2 in order to fill out this panel, the installation volume definition. So again, these are the 6 volumes that we identified on that diagram: our common, our 2 release volumes, or RELVOL here, our residence volume, spool, and paging. So we'll need to list the address of the 3390 DASD that we have reserved for each one of these purposes. Now that we've collected our materials, made blueprints, laid a foundation, and finalized all our plans, we're ready to begin construction. So we're going to use the install command to begin construction on the ZVM system. There's going to be a lot of output to the console as a lot of things start to happen. While install is running, the system will be IPL'd several times, and it may take around 20 minutes. So do keep your computer awake if you go away for a coffee break, because if user ID is running disconnected, then install won't be able to complete correctly. Once that install command finishes running successfully, your construction is complete, and it's time to customize the system. I hope you like interior design. So you can create some IPLable utilities, you can configure a basic network connection using TCP/IP, you can set up an external security manager, such as RACF, like the locks on your doors. You can create some procedures for backing up the system, which will be especially important as we proceed into the upgrade installation, but it's just a good idea in general. You can also enable any of those pre-installed licensed products and features that came with your installation, for example, Dermate. Our next example is of an upgrade installation. Let's say we have an existing system running 7.3 and we want to move that system to 7.4 with minimal disruption. Again, this is a non-SSI example, so we're only running a single system. Upgrade installation, also known as upgrade in place, answers the question, what if you have a house already built? What if you built up that house exactly to your specifications, filled it with all the furniture you want, put locks on the doors, spent a lot of time making that exactly what you wanted? And now you see up the hill, there's suddenly a shiny new release level. It's got all of these brand new features that you want to take advantage of, but it seems like a lot of work to move all your data up that hill and build a whole new house. Instead, why not install a new system on the second level of your home, and then move the new level of code to your current system with minimal impact, lifting your existing house up to the new release level. That is the principle behind the upgrade installation process. So let's look at a quick overview of this process. Firstly, you'll need to prepare your system, get it up to date with service. Then you'll be installing a second level work system at the new release level. So for example, we're moving 7.3 to 7.4, so we're going to need to install a 7.4 second level work system. Luckily, you're all experts in this after the first demo. This will follow the same procedure for the most part, but we'll use some different panels in the planning stage. Then you'll need to back up your system, and you'll run inst upgrade stage 1. You can still be running production while doing stage 1 of your upgrade. Once you're done with that, you'll need to back up your system again and shut down production for stage 2 only. Then, if this were an SSI system, you would have to go around and upgrade all of those other members. Remember, the upgrade installation for an SSI system happens member by member, one by one. Then, once you've removed the old version settings, you can start up production and fly again. Once again, before construction begins, we are going to need to gather our materials. So for an upgrade installation, the first requirement we have is, of course, the system to be upgraded. So for this example, we'll be starting from a 7.3 system. But you could also start from 7.2 to upgrade to 7.4. If your system is below this level, you'll need to move to 7.3 or to 7.2 before you can upgrade to 7.4. Next, we'll be using a CMS formatted mini disk once again to contain the ZVM 7.4 product. Again, there are some different options, but for this example, we'll be using the mini disk. Refer to the ZVM installation guide for more information about those other options. We'll need a supported processor and a local 3270 terminal, as well as the MyGmaint user ID. This is the user ID on which we'll be performing most of the functions for this upgrade installation. You'll also need some new DASD. This is for installing that second level work system, and some space on our existing volumes for adding new user IDs. There are some restrictions, especially related to SSI systems, systems managed by CSM, and systems that have RACF enabled. Again, refer to the installation guide for more details about these. Before proceeding with the upgrade installation, we'll first need to check the existing system. Firstly, please install all required service on that 7.2 or 7.3 system and complete any service or put to prod processing. There's a check APARS utility that can be used to identify service that you might need to apply after completing the upgrade, but this is the time to run that utility. You'll want to back up your user directory and make sure that you have mini disk or file pool space for your licensed products. Again, where you're going to need that space depends on where you installed those products during the initial install of that system. If you're using a directory manager such as Dermate, refer to that documentation. There may be configuration and settings that you need to update for the upgrade installation. For example, you might need to update your configuration files to include the new release volumes as part of your extents. If you're using an external security manager such as RACF, make sure that MyGmaint user ID, where we're going to perform a lot of tasks for the installation, has authority and disable mini disk password checking. You'll also need to verify a lot of things like verifying the system name in some files, verifying certain user IDs, just making sure that your system complies with all of the requirements for the upgrade installation. Again, there's a full list and information in the ZVM installation guide. Now that we've verified everything on our existing system, we can start laying some blueprints down for our upgrade installation journey. Firstly, we're going to need to complete these 3 worksheets regardless of the DASD type we're installing to. Firstly, we'll need to know the installation source. In our case, that's the CMS formatted mini disk, so we're going to need to know the location of that mini disk. Worksheet 2 asks some current system information. So for example, what DASD type did you originally install that system to? What is the default password? Where's the system config located? And how do you update your user directory? So these are the things that you already established about this current system. Next, we're going to need some space allocation for those new user IDs and mini disks. So this is space on the existing volumes. From our first example, we used 6 DASD to install to, so somewhere on those original 6 DASD, or any DASD that you might have added since to your system. You'll need space on that existing system to add these new mini disks. Then, this is where things split based off where we'll be installing that new work system. So in our example, we'll be installing that new work system to 3390 DASD. So we'll need to know the label and the address for each volume there. Again, if we were installing to FBA, then we might need to know where to define those volumes if they're not defined already. Let's return to the DASD layout diagram to understand what happens during the upgrade installation process. Here on the left in this purple circle is the original 7.3 system to be upgraded. So here's the common volume, the system residence volume, paging spool, and the release volumes at the 7.3 level. This 7.4 work system will be installed second level on top of the original 7.3 system. So it's almost similar to the traditional second-level installation that I covered earlier in this presentation. Again, just like that example, 6 volumes will be needed for this install. 1 common, 1 system residence, 1 paging, 1 spool, and 2 release volumes at the 7.4 level. What happens during the upgrade installation is that these 7.4 release volumes become a permanent part of the original system. So they were first installed as part of the work system, and they become permanently attached to this new 7.4 system. That system, that original system, can now access the 7.4 release volumes and run at the 7.4 release level. Those volumes that were used as the common, the system residence, the paging, and the spool for the work system, those can be recycled after the upgrade. Now we're ready to set up to install that second level work system. So again, this process is going to be really similar to that second level traditional installation example that I covered earlier in the presentation. We'll get access to our CMS mini disk and load the files onto it if needed, attach everything that needs to be attached, run that inst pipe, followed by DVD decode, and then DVD prime to load necessary files onto disks held by the MyGmate user ID. Again, all of this is covered in more detail in the ZVM installation guide. Unlike the traditional installation example, when we get to the install step here, we're going to use the install upgrade command, which will first ask us to confirm some information about the existing system. Then it'll ask you to confirm that you have the license to upgrade to the new release level. Then it'll bring up this panel to fill in, and we'll be using information off our worksheet 2 for this panel. So the DASD type that you'll install your work system to, your system config file, how you edit your user directory, and the default password. This will become the default password for any new user IDs that are added by the upgrade installation. Next, we'll use the information from worksheet 3 to fill out the label and the address for each new system volume. Again, this is for the second level work system. So this common volume, the residence, paging, and spool will all be recycled after the upgrade installation. They'll not become a part of your system. However, these release volumes will become a permanent part of your system, so be sure that you use DASD that you're comfortable with including permanently. Finally, we'll have to allocate some space on our existing system volumes for these new user IDs, which are going to be added by the upgrade from 7.3 to 7.4. So I've used the residence volume and the common volume that have been attached to my system from the very start from when I first installed it. So these are existing volumes, they're not new DASD. As install wraps up, I'll get to see a review of all of the information that I input during the install upgrade process. We're now ready to begin construction on that second level work system. Similar to traditional installation, we'll use the install command, and that'll run for about 15 to 20 minutes and put a lot of messages on the console about the various tasks that it's doing. Unlike traditional installation, it'll end with this message letting us know that the work system has been installed successfully. When you type go, that work system will be shut down and you'll be returned to MyGmate. Then you'll want to IPL CMS from MyGmate. Now that we've successfully installed our second level work system, we can start performing stage 1 and stage 2 of the actual upgrade itself. So first we'll need to back up the system that's all volumes except paging. You'll also want to create a backup of your user directory. If you use Dermaint as your directory manager program, you can use the commands derm backup followed by derm send user backup to create and retrieve that file. Then you'll want to make a backup of your system config file. That's usually located on the pmate Charlie Fox 0 disk. From MyGmate, then you'll run inst upgrade stage 1 prime. This generates the stage 1 changes table, which tells your system of all the changes that it's going to need to make during stage 1 of the upgrade. Again, you can still have production running while stage 1 of the upgrade is processing. Then you'll use the inst upgrade stage 1 commit command to execute all of those changes in the stage 1 changes table and to begin upgrading your system. If any warnings or errors come up during stage 1, you can find them on the $stage 1 $WRN file. That file is located on MyGmate's 2 Charlie Fox 0 disk. We're now about halfway there, now that we've completed stage 1. We'll need to take a look again at our interior design, see if anything's maybe shifted around, what with all this balloons and floating. Firstly, if we're using an external security manager such as RACF, verify some of your authorizations, define and authorize the new user IDs which have been added. If using Dermate, copy some of those configured Dermate files to the new release version and then recycle Dermate. If you have any local mods, they may need to be reworked or removed if they're not compatible with the new release. Finally, if you're using RACF, you'll need to convert the RACF database and make it exclusive to ZVM, as it can no longer be shared with ZOS on ZVM 7.4. Now we're ready to take off and run stage 2 of our upgrade. At this point, you'll need to stop any production workloads and then again back up your system. So that's all volumes except paging, the user direct, and the system config files. Then from Migmate, you'll run inst upgrade stage 2 prime to generate the stage 2 changes table. Then you'll run the inst upgrade stage 2 commit command to upgrade your system with the stage 2 changes defined in that table. Then you'll need to reaccess the files on your updated 190 disk with this command right here, IPL 190 parm auto cr. Then you'll reaccess your 24cc mini disk as C and reissue the command to complete the upgrade. Again, if any issues or warnings come up, you can see them in the $stage2 $WRN file on Migmate's 2 Charlie Fox 0 disk. Now that we've gone ahead and floated our house up to the new release level, some things might have fallen off the shelves, so we'll need to clean up with some post-upgrade tasks. Firstly, verify that the user directory is compatible with the new release. If you're using Dermate as your directory manager program, you can run the derm dir-edit command, and if you get an RC of 0, then your user directory is compatible. You'll want to review the changes that were made to the system config, and review the warn file on Migmate's 2 Charlie Fox 0 disk. You'll shut down and IPL the upgraded system, and then use the micro51dog utility to update Mate 740, the new maintenance ID for the 7.4 release level, that 51dog mini disk with some of these VMsays inventory files for those licensed software products that were not pre-installed. Here's a screenshot of the micro51dog utility. At this point, recycle those work system volumes, so that's the common system residence paging and spool volumes. The release volumes at the 7.4 level have been made a permanent part of your system, so those cannot be recycled. Then, depending on your specific configuration, you'll perform some post-upgrade tasks as prescribed in the ZVM installation guide. Thank you for working through these 2 examples with me. At this point, I'd like to share a few tips and tricks that I've picked up as a newcomer to ZVM installation and upgrade. Firstly, I highly advise using a chart or some kind of spreadsheet to visualize your DASD layout before installing. It doesn't need to be anything terribly scientific. This is mine right here, just on a piece of paper, but it'll be very helpful to visualize your system layout, especially if you're performing an upgrade installation. Only those release volumes are going to become a permanent part of your system, so carefully consider how those are going to fit into your DASD layout. I would advise using lower numbered volumes for your system itself and higher numbered ones for your backups. That'll create a nice layout for you. Also, many steps throughout this process may require you to use multiple 3270 sessions logged into different user IDs, so keep an eye on what disks you access and update from each. You don't want to have multiple sessions on different user IDs that are both trying to update the same disk, or the disk may get corrupted. If you see any access issues, check whether your directory manager is online and operational. Finally, as I've emphasized throughout this presentation, this is not intended to be your sole reference point for performing a traditional installation or an upgrade installation. This is intended to be a conceptual foundation and a process walkthrough that demystifies the installation guide and makes it a little more approachable for you. Not every essential step is covered in this presentation, so please read through the relevant sections of the installation guide before trying to perform an installation or an upgrade of your own. You'll also want to refer to the ZVM installation news site for the latest information and any known issues about installation. Lastly, you'll want to refer to the program directory for any of those pre-installed licensed programs that you have enabled on your system. So my examples used the Dermate facility, so I referred to this program directory to prepare for the upgrade installation procedure.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to see more videos like this one. Have a suggestion for another video topic? Feel free to leave a comment below.